And then Iron Man 2 comes out in 2010. We gave it a respectable 6.8. One of our friends who has watched most of these movies with us, either in the theater or watched them again later, hates Iron Man 2, says it's the worst movie. Marvel or basically otherwise, he just does not like Iron Man 2. Says it's so bad. And it's not anywhere near Iron Man 1. But when I was looking up movies or books to read to go along with this list, one of the reviews, it was the guy that writes the screenplay adaptation into a book, and the person said she had a soft spot for Iron Man 2 because this is where you see Tony Stark and Rhodey are actual friends. They're not just forced together through the military and Tony and Stark Industries. They're not just together because they have to be. It's not just like a work relationship. Rhodes is truly a friend of Tony Stark. And this also introduces War Machine, where Rhodes takes one of the suits. Which Rhodes is introduced in Iron Man 1 as well. Iron Man 2 also introduces Natasha Romanoff, or Black Widow. We don't know she's Black Widow at the beginning of the movie. She's like an undercover agent with S.H.I.E.L.D. Iron Man 2 shows the flaws. It shows, again, the inflated ego of Tony Stark. And he's kind of cocky, and there's that scene when are they in Paris? And they're going to do the NASCAR race thing, and he kicks his driver out, and he gets in, and he's gonna race his car. And this also introduces Jason Hammer, who is Hammer Tech, which is kind of like the rival to Stark Industries, and they're kind of taking over since Stark Industries said they weren't going to make weapons anymore. Our friend that hates this movie just thinks that Jason Hammer, is just the worst character ever. And my husband said Jason Hammer is like the knockoff version of Tony Stark. He tries to be cocky and the egotistical, and it's all about me, narcissistic. But he's just not. He just falls flat. He's trying to... In Iron Man 1, that reporter comes up to Tony Stark and is questioning him and in his face and stuff, and then they end up in bed together and sleeping together that night. And then in Iron Man 2, she shows up again, and he kind of brushes her off onto Jason Hammer. He's like kind of trying to flirt with her and get with her, and then she looks at the screen and Tony Stark is kicking out his driver and getting in, and she's like, see you later, I gotta go. And so he like falls flat with her. He can't keep her interest, anything like that. And yeah, he's just like Tony Stark, like the no-name brand kind of thing. So we're introduced to Whiplash in this, and Whiplash's dad worked with Howard Stark originally. And then there's a whole like background story to that where Ivan... I have all my notes on my phone, which is what I'm recording on. His dad, I think his dad is Anton, and the guy Whiplash, the big bad in this movie, is Ivan. But the dad went to the States, worked with Howard Stark. Howard Stark felt that he was going to use this technology for bad. So he had him deported back to Russia. And then, so he lived with this grudge this whole life. And the son lived with his dad being angry about this. And basically alcohol and anger and bitterness fueled this hatred for the son to hate Howard Stark's son, Tony Stark. So now the dad dies, and the kid is Ivan. He's Whiplash. He's like, that's it. I'm getting revenge for my father on Tony Stark. And so when Tony Stark is riding in the race car, that's when we first see Whiplash come out as Whiplash. And I really do like the whips. And it's got that like arc reactor technology stuff in it. And there's the fight. And I love Iron Man's suit in this. The Iron Man suit where he pulls out literally a suitcase and pulls on the suit is really cool. There's that fight. And then Tony Stark wins the fight, and he gets caught and he goes to jail, and then Jason Hammer gets him taken out of jail, like, secretly. He's dead. And he takes Ivan and he wants him to make these suits for Hammer Tech. So he shows up again in the end, and we also see that Tony Stark in this movie, we see that he's flawed, that there's problems with Tony Stark. He has a drinking problem. He's dying. That arc reactor technology in his chest isn't, there's a piece in there that is causing poisoning, basically, and he's dying. So he's the typical, like, playboy, party boy, I'm gonna drink. He throws himself a birthday party, and he just kind of, he's going over the edge. He's hitting rock bottom at this point and pissing everybody off along the way. And that's, again, where we see Rhodes come in and fight with him, and he puts on the suit and becomes War Machine, and War Machine and Iron Man are fighting together. And you see that, like, everyone cares about Tony, but they're frustrated with him. And they're like, this is it. What do we, like, you can't keep living this way. So we see a really real side and the human side of Tony Stark in this as well. And the, not so much the cocky, nothing can touch me side, but the I'm dying, the mortality of it. Anyways, they believe that Ivan, or Whiplash, is dead. So they go, at the end, when Hammer Tech has all these suits, he's actually hacked into them, and he is trying to kill Tony Stark. And so there's this fight between Iron Man and Whiplash with the suits first. And then, this is also, Iron Man 1, 2, we see the Jarvis, the voice, the computer system, the AI, artificial intelligence of Jarvis, we see in this, in Iron Man. And Iron Man is fighting the suits that Ivan has made, and then Whiplash comes in his suit, and there's like, okay, Ivan's the big bad. There's going to be this big, huge, epic battle between Iron Man and Whiplash. And when Whiplash lands, Rhodes, or War Machine, is awake, and Tony Stark is awake now, and they're both standing there like, okay, we're going to fight Whiplash together. And our friend who hates this movie said the scene is just too short. So I timed it. It's like a minute and a half. Fight's done. Tony Stark and Rhodes discovered that when they both, like, beam each other with their hands, it causes this, like, crazy huge explosion thing. And they do that fight at Tony Stark's birthday where he's been drinking and out of control. So they do that and, like, just wipe Whiplash out. Done. So I agree. That scene, it could have been a really cool epic battle. They could have found a different way for them to fight him. Either Rhodes wasn't awake yet, or was still knocked out or something, or they got separated somehow, anything like that. They could have upped the fight to a couple minutes long, and that would have been a lot cooler, would have been really neat, but they didn't. And it's not the best movie ever, but we do learn a few more things through Iron Man 2. Then we see the Hulk, and that came out in 2008 after Iron Man 1, I believe. And it's like the Hulk, I don't know what happened with the Incredible Hulk, but it was like it didn't even exist. It wasn't until like a few years later, my husband's like, I don't think the Hulk is part of this MCU. And then we're like, yes, it is. And then he's like, well, the Hulk was the first movie. And we're like, no, Iron Man. We looked it up. Iron Man came out first, and then the Hulk. They came out the same year, but a few months apart. So the Hulk, let's know the story about the Hulk too. It's actually, if you go back to Captain America, like I said, they were trying to come up with the super soldier serum. And in World War II. So in the 40s. So now the American government is still trying to come up with this super soldier serum. And they're trying different things, and they use gamma rays and create the Hulk. It doesn't work. It's not Steve Rogers. It turns you into this rage monster. A fun thing about this movie is Lou Ferrigno shows up in it as a security guard, and he says, "You're the man." And so I like that. I never watched the original Hulk show, but I do know that he is the Hulk. It's not the best movie, but as a standalone movie, it's not bad. That was a 6.5, and the cop, the chief in this movie, or not the cop, I get it mixed up with the other Spider-Man, where, like, I can't remember if it's the Incredible Spider-Man or what it is, but when the girlfriend is Gwen and her dad is the chief of police, I keep getting it mixed up with that, but his girlfriend in this, Elizabeth, her dad is like high up in the military, not the police. And if I could just remember his last name, he shows up again later on in the Marvel movies. At the end of Hulk, we also see Nick Fury and Tony Stark talking together about this initiative. Nick Fury has shown up a couple of times in the movies, so you always got to watch the end scenes to see what's happening, coming up next, kind of thing. So Tony Stark and Nick Fury have been talking about this initiative that he has, which started in Captain Marvel. So Hulk, we know that story. He's angry. He loses control, becomes the Hulk, and then so he wants to go into hiding so that he's not disruptive to the world around him, basically. So he goes off in hiding, and we don't see him again for a few more years. And then in 2011, we have Thor comes out, another origin stories. All these up until Avengers are basically origin stories, of course. We gave this one a 7.3 out of 10. I like Thor. I think the guy who plays Loki is really good. Yeah, there's a lot of twists and turns in Thor within the Odin family, the Odinson family, that like the deception with Loki and the fact that Loki is actually, that Odin took Loki from the Frost Giants, that he was basically a baby that was weak and dying, so the Frost Giants just left him to die. Odin found him and took him and raised him as his son. And Loki doesn't know that until Thor is going to become the next king of Asgard. And Thor gets banished and sent to Earth until he can become worthy of his title again. And I'm trying to remember who is introduced in Thor. So we have Thor, we have Loki, Heimdall, who is the guardian of the Bifrost, that kind of opens up the gates to the different worlds. The Frost Giants, the Shatari, Thanos shows up at some point. Thanos shows up in Captain Marvel. I think we see at the end of Avengers, we see Thanos for the first time. Thor shows us Jane, the girl, the scientist. Dr. Eric Slevlig, who also shows up in Avengers. Who else is in Thor that shows up again that's important? I can't think. Oh, we see Hawkeye for the first time, and Agent Coulson, of course, is there. Lots goes on with Thor. I don't need to give a full description of all the movies to you guys, obviously. Again, I like Thor. I like that he's learning the different customs on Earth, but he's respectful of it. They go to the cafe, him and Jane and her, I can't remember the other girl's name, and Eric, the doctor. They're all scientists, and he likes the coffee, and he says, "I want another," and he like smashes the coffee cup on the ground. "This is good, I'll have another." And the kids saw that scene and they thought it was hilarious. But they're like, "Whoa, you don't do that here." And he's like, "Oh, okay. I didn't mean to be disrespectful." So even though he comes from somewhere where their customs are different and everything, he still, as he's learning about Earth, he respects Earth and our customs. And then that brings us to the Avengers. And I remember when the Avengers was the big movie to go to. And I was like, how are they going to fit all these people? How are they going to get all these big characters like Tony Stark and Bruce Banner and Thor Steven Rogers, how are they going to get all these people in one movie and make it a good movie and not focus on like just mainly Tony Stark and then the other people are kind of there. But I felt like they did a really good job of giving everyone bits and pieces of this story. So Loki has the Tesseract and he comes in and you see at the end of Thor, Loki dies. We believe he dies. Thor thinks he's dead, Odin thinks he's dead. And at the end of Thor, we see that they're talking to, Nick Fury is talking to the Dr. Slevig, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Dr. Fury is talking to the doctor, Eric, about the Tesseract and how they can use this and make their own weapons out of it, phase 2. And we see Loki is kind of lurking in the background and he says something and then the doctor repeats it. So in the Avengers, Loki has his scepter and he touches the doctor and takes mind control over the doctor, and they take the Tesseract and they're going to use it as a power source to open up a portal for the Chitauri to come down and overtake Earth. And there's a plan between Loki and the Chitauri. And it's basically like, I'll give you Earth and you give me this and whatever. So you have Thor coming to take back Loki to Asgard to make him pay for what he's done. But the people on Earth are like, whoa, 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 you can't take Loki. He's our prisoner. And there's that little bit of a story there. And then Natasha Romanoff, or Black Widow, is sent to find Bruce Banner as the Hulk. And so there's that little piece of story there. And then we see a bigger piece of Hawkeye in this movie where Loki also mind controls Hawkeye. I'm trying to remember his name too. There's so many like names and then like their superhero names to remember. And then in this movie, you see Tony Stark meet Steven Rogers, and there's already like a rivalry there. There's already Tony Stark's dad Howard Stark talked so much about Steven Rogers and how amazing he was and how he helped create this super soldier and all this stuff. And I think Tony Stark's a little bit jealous. And Tony Stark's one of the guys that helped find Steve Rogers and pull him out of the Earth. And you see the tensions there already that really come to a head in Civil War. And that's one of my favorite movies, and I'm so excited to get to it. We're not quite there yet. We just watched Avengers a few days ago. But you already see the tensions starting in the Avengers, and they work well together. They do. When they have to, and they're pulled together through the circumstances of Loki, basically pulls them together to work. But if it was just them in a room, they're just fighting. But when they have a common enemy, then they get together and work. So, to get off of all the movies, what I want to talk about is the books that I found. So, I meant to kind of talk about the book or the movie then the book, but I haven't found a movie necessarily for Iron Man 2, and I may not pick movies for I might not pick a book for every single movie, but I will pick maybe for that series kind of thing. And the 1000th Floor is an Iron Man book that I might check out for the Iron Man movies specifically. Iron Man 3 I know deals with PTSD from Tony Stark at the end of the Avengers, takes a missile and shoots it up into the portal that Loki had opened with the Tesseract, and he shoots a missile up and he's in space, and then he falls back to the ground and crashes, and Hulk ends up waking him up. And I know he has PTSD from all that's happened in the Avengers. So maybe there is a book I can read. If you have any recommendations for that, let me know. But I know that I can maybe find a book for that. But I want to read The 1000th Floor for Iron Man. Captain America, Wolf by Wolf. Captain Marvel, I couldn't really find a novel that I wanted to read. But there is Miss Marvel Volume 1 that looks good as a comic book, and there's also one, Moon Girl, and then it's like in the demon or the devil dinosaur or something. It looks kind of cute. As comic books, Iron Man, Hulk was the Shatter Me series, which I've heard about here on BookTube, so I might pick up at least the first one and read it and see what I think about that. And then Thor was Beyond a Darkened Shore, It sounded interesting. And then The Avengers was suggested. Six of Crows, which a lot of people have also talked about on BookTube, so I might pick it up for that. It might give me an excuse to read it. So my next, I'm hoping to, I'll post this video, and then next week I'll probably post something different, and then in a couple of weeks anyways, I'll read these books and I'll do like a vlog about the books that I'm reading that go along with the movies. And I'm going to have a little Marvel movie book series on my channel just for this year anyways. But I'm a little bit all over the place here. I tend to ramble and talk, and then I forget what I'm talking about and blame it on mommy, pregnancy brain, or whatever. But that's the first 6 Marvel movies in chronological order. Our thoughts on them a little bit, and the books that I'm going to read for them. If it is a series like Shatter Me, I'll at least read the first one. And I tend to like to do, like, finish a series, but if I'm not interested in it, then I'm not going to waste my time, especially if it's more than 2-3 books. There's just too many books to read, and none of these books that go with these movies are on my list already. So my TBR, my goal this year was to just read the books on my shelves, and I have bought so many books. And it's January 20th, and it was like by January 16th, I'd already bought way too many books. So anyways, I'm going to end this here. This video is already an hour long, so let's have some fun editing it down. And thank you for watching my talking and gushing about Marvel. And I'll see you next week. And I'll update with the books that I've been reading for this. And I'll see you next time. Bye!